Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about the problem with fixing the whole arch situation in powerlifting and why it's not really feasible. Because this comes up quite a bit in my topics, and people say, oh, it's cheating. What do you think about it? And here's the thing. I've made the point before that some people just have genetic leverages that allow them to do this. They have the flexibility to do it. It's really not that big of a deal because those little tiny ranges of motion that you see, you see those things, but how many people can really do them, right? It's only people in lighter weight classes with short arms and with great back flexibility, and it tends to be women who have those ranges of motion that are tiny, tiny, tiny. Well, if they have really short arms, they usually suck at the deadlift. So they're not winning meets. They have a genetic advantage for one lift. Okay, and it's very, very difficult to win a powerlifting meet based off your bench press, right? If that's by far your best lift, you better be amazing at it. And particularly if they have, again, the short arms. And I mean, Mike right there is the perfect example. You guys see my client Mike. He's got a good bench. He can arch really well. He has shorter arms. He's a terrible deadlifter. And no matter how much work we put in, his deadlift is barely higher than his squat. And it has to do with him having shorter arms. Every time he pulls, it's like pulling off a 3-inch deficit, okay, compared to someone with more, normal arm lengths, more average or longer. But he's a good bencher. Now, before we get into the problem of judging it, I want people to understand. I've outbenched Mike. I'm a close grip bencher with long arms. My range of motion is over double his. Okay, we're in similar body weight categories. Of course, I'm older as masters, so I get handicap points, but I have outbenched him. In spite of all those advantages, I've still outbenched him. Is it that big of a deal then? All right, and then look at my clients like Michelle, who's only a close grip bencher. She has a good arch. She has a long range of motion. And I'm going to show this. Like 3 of my clients who are known for their arching, who would be Mike, Emma, Michelle, they all arch a lot. But notice the differences in their range of motion. Like Mike is the only one with a short range of motion, and that's him close gripping, so it's longer there. He's the only one with the genetic set of traits we're talking about to get the range of motion fairly short. And again, that is the hallmark of oftentimes a world-class bencher. But then again, there are people who have long ranges of motion and don't do this who are world level. But they're big, strong men. Okay, and that's the point. The point is brute strength can make up for it. So people can argue about the cheating all they want, but someone who is just strong still wins. They'll still outbench them. They just need thicker upper bodies, okay, to get through that leverage advantage. Again, how many of the top level benchers in the world don't even use a super wide? Some even use a close grip, like at least one I can think of. But how many of the guys benching over 700 pounds raw? A whole lot of them don't even have that short range of motion. They're just big and strong. They're just big and strong. All right, so what's the issue? The issue is it's a tempest in a tea storm. There's no way to effectively judge it. People come up with silly stuff like, well, we could change benching to where you have to go to 90 degrees, blah, blah, blah. How are you going to measure that? Do you guys understand how ambiguous and hard that is? We don't have the same reference points on the body to achieve that we do with, say, a squat. And look how hard it is for people to judge the squat. How hard is it for people to judge the squat? And what are you going to talk about the 90 degrees? Look how big Michelle's arch is. Okay, you can't make people bench flat back. They're going to get injured. In fact, the ability for people to arch and to make it into a big exercise is the only reason the bench is even useful for your total. Like if we start making the bench press harder to where people have to lift way less weight, the bench press is going to become completely irrelevant. Okay, do you guys understand that? I don't know if people understand that. If we go out of our way to make the bench press harder and more injury prone with stuff like, well, let's just get rid of arching completely, force a flat back and all this stuff, well, it's going to make people get hurt, number one, because it's not the safe way to bench. You shouldn't bench with a flat back. causes a higher risk of shoulder injury. Number two, we start making the bench go down. So what happens with our guys who bench 500 and now benching 400 because you guys try to put tighter rules in like that? It's going to be very hard to enforce. Well, the bench starts to become irrelevant to powerlifting in general. Then no one cares about it because it doesn't matter to your total. And it'll really just become a deadlift contest. Right? You will turn powerlifting into a deadlift contest where long arms are dominant instead of both arm lengths having an advantage and a disadvantage. So it's exactly what you'll do. Great for people like me, I guess. All right, I had people suggest the other big one. Well, we changed the rings. Well, here's your problem. For decades and decades and decades, all barbells are set with a standardized set of rings for the current rules in bench pressing. It's industry-wide standard. How are you going to change the industry standard? How are you going to change that industry standard? What are you going to do? Because you're going to have to apply the rules to everyone. Right now, the reason people get away with that big arch and having a really short range of motion is not just the arch, it's the grip with it. It's really small people who can grip the bar just as wide as the big people. And it's based upon the ring spacing. We have rules in place to where everyone has the same rules. It removes all ambiguity on the grip width. So people have suggested we find a way to force people to grip narrower. Well, it has to be for everyone. You can't say, oh, well, people in a certain weight class have to grip it closer. So you're just going to encourage everyone to get fat who wants to bench press to get out of that weight class? That's what you would do. Right? You're going to give the lighter weight classes a rules disadvantage. Otherwise, what are your only options? Because remember, weight classes are height classes in disguise. That's what they actually are. Okay. So to make it fair, you've got to apply the same rule to everyone, including the 300-pound guys are going to have the same grip rule the 100-pound girls do, so that we have standardization and everyone has the same rules. How are you going to enforce that otherwise? Because now we're getting into different rules, and judges have to remember that when people go up to the platform. Oh, we didn't realize, we forgot that person was in that weight class, whatever. When we were rotating 100 bench pressers through back to back to back. Okay, you got to have the rules standardized for quick judging. You have to. And you got to get all the feds on board. All the feds right now use the same rules. All the feds use the same rules for this around the world. You got to get them all on board. Okay, this is a problem. The only way, and plus, again, barbells are standardized. The only way this is going to work then is when you say, well, everything has to be inside the rings. And that will eliminate that, because look at the difference with Mike when he close grip benches. He's in the rings. His range of motion goes up a few inches. Okay. That's the only way that works. Do you think everyone's going to be cool with that? How many people out there are going to complain? How many gym lifts then are guys going to want to count all the time? Count it as a real bench. And it's just not necessary, because at the end of the day, people are freaking out over about 5 to 10 people around the world. Hell, over half of them aren't even in America. That's who we're talking about. And we're talking about sweeping the rules for the biggest strength sport in the world over less than a dozen people. Or we could just say they have a genetic advantage on leverages, and they're not even necessarily winning the meets at the world level. They're just good at bench pressing. Who cares? All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.